Welcome to 3D View, one conversation, three different perspectives. I'm Lamondre Pugh.
I am David Perez.
And I'm Richard Strice. Thank you for joining us.
Amidst the rapid change that's happening throughout not only the United States, but really throughout the world, there's something else that's emerging as well, and that's diversity in politics. And what's really interesting about that, and I don't think there's anything that makes that more evident than presumptive Democratic nominee for president Joe Biden choosing Kamala Harris as his running mate. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Kamala Harris, she is an African-American woman who is a senator from California, and she was once California's attorney general. And she really is an interesting choice for vice president. I think she's an incredible person, but this choice is obviously going to be met with some resistance, but also a ton of enthusiasm. So what we're going to talk about today is just that, diversity in the political system and what that means for democracy. So David and Richard, you guys ready to go?
Let's do it.
Let's talk about it then. So Kamala Harris as the choice for the vice presidential running mate. What do you guys think about this choice? Bold move or error?
Well, I think it's definitely a bold move, and I think it is an interesting choice. You know, as you said, there's certainly going to be individuals which may question that only because of some of her track record as the Attorney General in California and her record with some of the decisions she's made there. But she's tough. She's extremely smart. She's certainly very capable of not only doing the VP position, but being able to step into the presidential position if that's necessary. I certainly have no doubt that she's extremely capable of handling that. But I think getting up to that, the road to that has been very, very tough. It's not an easy path to get oneself into the position of being a contender for either of those roles, and so she's shown that she has the ability to be able to withstand the pressures that are required and the organization that's required in order to get her to that position. So she's a good choice. She's also not necessarily a Washington hound, which some other of the choices sort of have been. They're more familiar and more typical of roaming the halls in Washington, and so in that regard, she's sort of a fresh face coming in, which I think is really, really important. And to a lot of the people in the country right now, as opposed to Joe, who has been in the White House and been roaming around Washington for decades, and so he always considers himself and refers to himself as that transitional candidate. So I think it's important that he's picked an individual that shows diversity, because I think that's really, really important in now in this period of time. She's someone who is certainly very, very capable. It is a bold move. She is up to date. She's relevant. She's up to speed with social media and being able to leverage and utilize that in her political machine, in her wheelhouse. So she's which again isn't Joe's strong point. He has people that do that, but he himself is really sort of not necessarily as connected with all of that, where she is just front and center and understands how all that works, personally herself and the realities and importance of that. So yeah, bold candidate to do. It's certainly going to raise eyebrows, I think, but I think everyone's going to warm up to her in seeing how she's transitioned. I mean, she was the Attorney General in California. at a period of time where some tough decisions had to be made, and not necessarily popular decisions, but tough decisions. And whether you agree with it or not, she stood by them and made those decisions, and not being swayed necessarily by political powers around or public opinion. And so I think that's really important in a leader, that we have somebody who makes those tough decisions.
And that's the job. The job is to make tough decisions. That's what it's about. David?
Yeah, no, that of course, being a vice president, it's not an easy job, and you have to be prepared for it. And I think that she has proven with her track record that she is very well positioned to do that. One interesting thing that I found out astonishing is that it's going to be the first woman vice president in the U.S. So that means there has never been another woman that has.
There's been other candidates that have
occupied that office, right? Yeah, but I have that hope that she's going to win, and she's going to be the first one to occupy the office. And Costa Rica had a woman president, I think, 2 terms ago. Yeah, about 2 terms ago.
Actually, yeah, when I was living there, she was president.
Yeah, and of course that was a big shock, and for the most of the population, and we were one of the first countries in Latin America to actually have a woman president. But what I see in that is doors being opened more than anything else. It is showing that their diversity can actually be the norm instead of just be something that you add upon the white guys, right? Because it opens so many doors for so many people. Her heritage also shows a lot of the U.S., right? She has an Indian mother and a Jamaican father. She is basically born from immigrants. She is America. She is what I understand America is. A lot of diversity in itself. So I think it was the right choice, mostly because of that. I think America wanted someone that represented them, not only the white American population.
Right. I think you guys both bring up very interesting points, but there are a couple of things that I want to kind of look at. You said that in Costa Rica, maybe 2 terms ago, there was a woman.
Yeah, that would be 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years ago. So there was a woman president. Richard said it was during the time that he lived there. So when I think back on America's political history, I think about Shirley Chisholm being the first woman to run for president. Then we had Geraldine Ferrara, who ran as the vice presidential candidate with Walter Mondale. Then after that, we've had Hillary Clinton, who was the candidate for the presidency. And now we have Kamala as a VP nomination. So when we look at this, with those, that was 4 women. You would think that a country like America that purports equality and representation and all of that, that it would be a much deeper history than that. But that's about what we have. And I may have missed one in there, but I know it's not a whole lot more than that. What do you think the significance is going to be for America with this choice? What is the real significance in terms of how we see ourselves as a country and what it represents to the rest of the world?
Yeah, I think, as David, you mentioned, having an individual that represents more, I think, a larger population of the U.S. that, for the most part, has been sidelined or not necessarily front and center. I think that's really important. It's certainly a much better cross section of who we are as a diverse population. And I think we are going to see much more of that of individuals creeping into the various positions, senators, assemblymen, congressmen, or congresspersons, people, I should say. Again, old habit. We have a really diverse assembly in DC, and every term it seems to get more and more, which is fantastic. I see, as you said, it hasn't happened necessarily overnight, but I think it's exciting to see that as young people are going through university and coming out, they're getting interested in politics. They see the need for that involvement and a diverse population of youths that are getting involved, and that's the future. We have some very young Congress people in current administration that in the current sessions there that that are young and diverse, and they didn't get there overnight. It takes a lot of hard work, and it's exciting to see that population. All of those individuals see that there is the ability for them to be able to make that, and I think it's the individuals that you mentioned that were before that provide that light ahead of them that says, hey, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it. And the more we see of that, it becomes exponential as we see larger and larger groups of different people represented, which is the way it should be. It's been a slow roll. It's been a very slow, too slow for us to get to this point. But it's a genie that has come out of the bottle, and it's not going back, and it's only going to get more and more diverse. So I think it's a good thing,
right?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, man, the 116th Congress was really the most diverse Congress that we've ever had. Now, having said that, it's still woefully unrepresentative of the population of the U.S., but it's more diverse than it had ever been before.
Very true.
And so we still have a long way to go, but it's amazing. And I would even dare to say that much of that is because of the current administration, that people, because people were not satisfied with the way that things were going. We had, the rising of the Me Too movement, then the divisiveness of racial tensions, i.e., Charlottesville, Virginia, and the things that happened around those times. And so it inspired and encouraged diverse populations to really get involved. And what's funny is it happened across all levels. It wasn't just like a push for Congress, but even in local situations, people really became active. And that wave is still riding. We're still moving forward in that. So it's really been interesting to see how the face of politics is changing, because people are tired and they feel like if anybody can make a change, I can make a change. And I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and that's a testament to democracy itself, right? The fact that people are taking to actually getting involved into politics and making sure that their voices are heard is a testament that democracy works in one way or another to at least make your voice heard, right? To try to make a dent into the system. And that's why I was saying that Kamala opens doors, because she's going to be very, very visual. Like, everyone's going to know about her, right?
Yeah.
There's no way that you're not going to know about a vice president of the US. Even if you, right now, I can bet you that most of the world doesn't care about the Congress in the US. They don't really know about anyone, but they know about Trump, and they know about Mike Pence, and they knew about Obama, and they knew about Joe Biden, right? Because the US are leaders, even if if they don't do the right thing always, they are leaders, and a lot of countries around here do what the US is doing. So
they follow suit.
Being able to see that diversity in politics up front in the US, I think, is going to bring a lot of good changes across the board, because we have to remember there's a lot of diversity in the world, and there's a lot of diversity in the US that's not being represented. And if those voices are not being represented. They're probably not being heard. And if they're not being heard, their needs are not being attended. That is what creates inequality. And the biggest problem that we have right now with COVID is inequality. Mm-hmm. And I think that being able to see yourself and believe in the system is going to bring a lot of people a lot of drive to get those changes.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. And I guess that leads me to my next round of questioning in terms of, as you said, 2 terms ago in Costa Rica, there was a woman president. Mm-hmm. What during that election cycle and all that happened, what was the general mood and feeling of the country in itself as once they realized, okay, well, during the race or during the election period, but then especially after she won?
That's a very interesting, so I was not there at the actual election. So when I moved there, she was already president, and I can give you some interesting. So David, I'm interested to hear what that election cycle was like. And I can give you what I experienced at the time I was there. I was dealing with a lot of construction work, a lot of the major general contractors and architect firms in Costa Rica. So I'll give you a perspective of their feelings and the feedback I got from that. But anyway, I want to hear what the election cycle was like.
Okay, so that election cycle was pretty fun. Right before her candidacy was announced, she was actually vice president. She was in government with Oscar Arias. Oscar Arias was one president that we had that was reelected for that term, but he was president for the first time in 1986, I think. And he's actually a Nobel Prize winner, Peace Nobel Prize winner. Mm-hmm. So he had all the support and a political machinery doing the work to get him elected. And of course, he wanted his policies and programs to continue. In Costa Rica, we only have 4-year terms, and he wanted someone that he could trust, that he could have do the things that he wanted to do. And he thought about Laura Chinchilla. And her candidacy was supported by one of the biggest political figures in Costa Rica. So it was not a normal candidacy. It was almost a given that she had won, even before it started. And even though it was a given because of the party and her background, it was a hard battle with PAC, Partido Acción Ciudadana, which is now in government. And why was that fight big? Because she was a woman. People were not sure that a woman would be a good president. Because she had everything to win. And even though it was a very hard battle, but the election cycle came and went, and she won. Very well won election, and she did a good job as president. I can't say that she did not do a good job as president, but I don't see a woman getting elected again. People have that much resentment towards governments in Costa Rica that they think it was all because she was a woman. Everything bad that happened is because she was a woman. So they decided to translate it.
So it wasn't about policy. It wasn't about economic conditions. It wasn't about any of those things. It was purely because of her gender.
It was purely because of her gender. And it is sad to realize that can happen as well, right? That if the government doesn't go perfectly, you're probably gonna get blamed just because you're a woman. But that's what happens in business as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If a woman is manager and something goes wrong, you're immediately fired, and we have to bring someone else in to fix what you did. If a white man messes it up, we're probably going to give you another chance because things happen, right? The world's a mess right now.
Definitely going to give him another chance to screw it up again. And that's just kind of the positioning. And I'll tell you what's interesting about this. I was thinking about the double standards that we put out there and we play, and not just based on gender either. There are multiple double standards that are at play. I started thinking about, Kamala is a very strong, um, sharp person, period. Now, take gender out of it. She's a very strong, very sharp person. And every time you see that, particularly in American politics, uh, those who oppose usually, well, they use the term a very nasty woman. It was said about Hillary Clinton. It was said about, and now it's being said about Kamala. Um, when the VP choice was selected, one of the first things that came out was, well, I don't know if she's really an American citizen. I don't know if she really qualifies for that. Where did we hear that same rhetoric before? We heard that same rhetoric with President Barack Obama. And here's the thing. The thing that Barack Obama and Kamala Harris have in common is that they're both African American. So we hear those double standards being presented out there. And what's interesting, I don't recall no one ever taking seriously any of the other presidential candidates who were primarily white men. They never questioned their background. They never, and when I say background, in terms of are they American citizens or not? I've never heard that. The only person that I really heard that was Ted Cruz. And people were saying, wait a minute, he's Canadian. What is this? You know,
those Canadians.
You know, so it was, and then, but even in that, it wasn't taken seriously. No one put in the effort. There was no investigation. There was no one screaming for a long form birth certificate. There was none of that. But again, she's an African American woman. So now you have, is she really an American? Number one. And number two, that she's a nasty woman. And wow.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that, and is that it comes down to intimidation, right? I think many or typical individuals, men, would be intimidated by coming across a woman who is more intelligent, powerful, well connected, educated. And I think the knee-jerk reaction to that is intimidation, and with intimidation comes, you know, this double standard that gets created as a result of finding anything to be able to try to bring down or erode that the prominence of that of the individual, and so, you know, and I saw that when I was in Costa Rica with Laura Chinchilla. It was exactly the same thing with the contractors and so forth that I was with. You know, they did nothing but badmouth when I was in meetings with them. You know, they would badmouth her about this policy and that policy, even though the policy itself wasn't really bad, but it was the fact that it was created by a woman that was creating these issues that they had to now conform to, and that was something that was very difficult for them to stomach. And these are all old school. You know, the heads of these contracting firms. These are major, large contracting firms and architectural firms. They're run by, you know, 75, 80-year-old plus guys, and you know, they're old school, all that old school type, good old boy thinking, which really has no place in the world anymore. That's the old way of doing business, the old way of thinking, and that's
shouldn't.
sort of what we're. It should never have existed to begin with, you know, certainly. But I think that's the transition that we're seeing, and we're seeing that now happen here in the U.S. And with the choice of Kamala Harris moving into the positions that she is, and we see what's happening with senators and mayors and governors and assemblymen and assembly persons. We see this transition of that, where that old school, that old mentality of thinking that's creating that creates that sort of double standard that you were talking about. That's changing and it's shifting, and I think that's one of the things that's so exciting about this period of time.
Yeah, having more representation is of course going to change that, but we can't deny the fact that just by being African American or by being a woman, you have to fight more. to get what
Yep.
you're looking
right,
to get, right?
right now. Yeah.
Your race is uphill.
Mhm.
It's a battle uphill all the way from the moment you start to, and you can't rest. There's nothing you can do that's wrong, because they're going to point at you and they're going to try and get you down,
Yeah.
just because you are not the standard
Mm.
politician. And representation is going to help get us to where we want to be. And of course, that's exciting, being able to be living in a time where that's actually happening, and it's just not just rhetoric.
Mm.
But we need to be aware that they are going to have a hard time because of their skin color and because of their gender.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I often say that when President Barack Obama decided that he was going to run, he literally had to run an almost spotless campaign, and he did. He did. Now, don't get me wrong. There were things that happened, and there were some blunders. But truthfully, in comparison to other comparable, I can't even say comparable campaigns, because there was nothing that came close to that. Nothing. But if you looked at other campaigns, there were so many more follies. There were so many more mess ups. There were so many more skeletons that came out of the closet, that had that happened during his campaign, it would have completely derailed it. But they weathered the storm. And even as president of the United States, in going through the things that they went through, his biggest, or one of it, I shouldn't say his biggest, but one of his biggest scandals was the fact that he wore a tan suit one time.
Yeah.
And it was a thing. It literally became a thing. Or he had his feet up on the presidential desk. Well, the truth is, all of them did that. Every single one of them. And there are photos of it. But it was not an issue. His wife wore a sleeveless dress, and it became a thing. How many times was Hillary Clinton dragged before Congress looking at I forgot the name of the scandal, but of the situation, Benghazi. Looking at the Benghazi situation, how many times was she drugged before Congress, over and over and over and over again, with no new evidence, no new anything, but it was still done. I mean, so you're right. It's almost as if, and I've said this before, that the majority population can do about 75% and get kudos and acknowledgement and promotion. But then you let someone from the minority come in that position and perform at 100%, they'll be criticized and ostracized. You literally have to do 150% above and beyond, excellence all the time, in order to get 80% recognition that you deserve. So it is an uphill battle, but I honestly believe that, and again, I'm an optimist. I honestly believe that things are changing. Yes, it's still very much an uphill battle, but I believe we're in for the fight. I really do.
Well, we're transitioning, right? And transitions are never easy, and they can be painful. But the good news is that there's always everything's always better on the other side once we go through and work through the pains and challenges. History has shown us that time and time again. Change is never graceful. It seems when it comes to politics or changes in regimes or changes in operational modes, it can be very messy, but it's always better on the other side, and that's what is exciting about moving forward and pushing through this.
Yeah, and there's always something to learn, even in the bad things, right? I don't think that the U.S. is going to be the same ever again that it was before Trump's presidency.
Very true.
With whatever happens in November, I know that things are going to be better, because people are more aware of their choices. People are more aware of what can happen if things go wrong, and what can happen if we simply decide to not do anything because we're not happy with the system. the only way to change the system is to be part of the system. And I think that we're going to get a more inclusive and better society out of this. I am sure of it. But we need to do the work, right? We need to be out there saying the things and making noise as much as possible, because there are still people, as Richard was saying, here in Costa Rica, and I'm sure across the world, that do not think that a Black person or a woman are able to govern a country. And that simply needs to change.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you, even if the evidence suggests different, that information is not true. I mean, you look at what President Obama did during one of the worst economic turns in America. Honestly, the prosperity that we experienced is a direct result of his administration, because as we know, turning an economy is like turning a ship. It's just not like, oh, you turn the wheel and it just turns. No, it takes years. It takes policies. It takes things that are put in place, and you will see the results a few years down the road. And that's what we experienced with the stock market boom that happened during the beginning of Trump's presidency. And yes, there was a Trump bump, but the truth is those huge gains, that was a direct result of the Obama administration. And honestly, the divisiveness that now permeates American politics is a direct result of the views that people have had of President Obama and the amplification of that by President Trump. And so now what I'm hoping is that with the diversity that we see now, that not only will this momentum continue in the U.S., but that it also echoes all around the world. As we've seen when I was talking about evidence, I was thinking about what the German chancellor has done and how Germany really has been a real example now of strong leadership and what it means, when you think of what Imelda Marcos has been able to do. Did I say her name right? I think I did.
Angela Merkel. That's how we say. I'm not sure how it's said in German.
Well, I think Europe has and other countries have shown leadership in having strong female leaders throughout them. Let's not forget Margaret Thatcher, right, Prime Minister in the UK, and there's countless examples of that in many countries. So, I mean, there's no question that the U.S. is really behind the curve on this. It's certainly nothing new and unique to many other parts of the world in regard to female leaders, but it certainly raises eyebrow that the U.S. is finally coming to itself in realizing that, hey, you know what, that's okay, and it's more than okay. It's actually a very good thing, and it's something we should have done a long time ago. And so that's one of the, again, I think that's one of the great things with the choice of Kamala Harris as VP, because it really sort of becomes a very strong, visible symbol, like Lamondre, like you mentioned earlier, to the world that we are sort of coming of age and becoming a mature enough country. Let's face it, we're still considered a baby country. That we're finally reaching that level of maturity to join the rest of the world in regard to our understanding and the realization of how diversity and equal representation is really important in a government.
Yeah, I really believe that much of what the pain and the transition that we're experiences is just that. It's growing pains. And when we were thinking about the hope and change of the Obama campaign and administration, the thing that I realized is that all of it is an evolution. All of it is growth, and sometimes in growth there is pain. As I said, change can be costly and it can be painful, but this is a part of it. And I believe that much of what we've seen has been necessary for us to grow and move to the next level. Even some of the divisiveness that we've experienced has been necessary in order to root some of that stuff out and make people see that, this is real. And as we're winding down the show today, I want, if you guys wouldn't mind, I'd like to hear what is your hope for tomorrow in terms of the diversity that's represented, and what does that mean to the rest of the world?
Well, I think equal representation of the diversity of a country is just so absolutely critical to be able to have strong, good policies that's sustainable. You can't create policies in a vacuum for a small segment of the population when you have a very diverse and mixed population, and pretend that that's going to be sustainable. And I think one of the huge cause and effects of that, of the lack of that, is what we're going through, is the growth pains that we're going through right now, is sort of that bubble bursting in regard to enough is enough with the minority dictating and creating policies that aren't sustainable with an immensely diverse and vocal population. And so I think that what I believe and know that the future will hold is that as we have even more larger diversity representation that equates to the diversity of the population of the country itself, that we're going to have much better, stronger, sustainable policies that and that will become, I think, an example and sort of a proof to the rest of the world that even though we're stumbling a little bit now as we go through these growing pains, that we'll get our act together and we can move forward and pick up and be better than we were.
Absolutely. No, and I agree with you, Richard. And I think that one extra thing that I can hope for is that it becomes easy to be diverse, instead of having to fight for it. I really want for organizations, for governments, for countries, for the UN, for every single entity that exists to be diverse effortlessly, to understand that we are all individuals that think and do things differently, and that it doesn't matter. We are just individuals, and we need to work together to make society a better place for all of us. So that's my hope.
Yeah. Beautiful. My hope is that with the increase of diversity, that we recognize that this is really about making it better for our world, creating a world where people matter, where all people actually matter. And I'm not talking about just some cliche thing, but no, where the interests and the aspirations of all people are considered important, equally important, where we make decisions that's good for the planet, that's good for peace, that's good for life, that's good for mankind. And where we realize that we do have a voice. And the last part of my hope is really a challenge. And that challenge is even you watching 3D View right now or listening to 3D View right now, that you realize that you can make a difference and that your voice and your efforts are important, that you're spurned enough to get involved, and that involvement could be as simple as participating in the electoral process in terms of voting or supporting certain campaigns. But no, I really, really, really want to see you run for office. I want to see you get involved in your local politics, in your state, regional, whatever it is. Get involved and make a difference. Because ultimately, this whole thing is about us. It's about us as the human race. So just know that you make a difference, and you can make a difference, and you should make a difference. That's all the time we have for 3D View. It's been a great conversation. I hope you're encouraged and inspired to get out there and make something happen. Thank you for listening.
Go out and vote. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on 3D View. Make sure to visit our website, ruhglobal.com/3dview. That's ruhglobal.com/3dvu, where you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts or join our YouTube channel so you will never miss a show. While you're at it, if you find value in the show, we appreciate it if you would leave a like or comment, or simply tell a friend about the show. That would really help us a lot too. If you would like to join our conversations, you can join our Facebook community, 3D View, 3 Perspectives, 1 Conversation.